Not only there have been two major deaths in the music industry, at least this week. One is Aaron Carter, which we'll be talking about in just a moment, but one is Takeoff, who is, of course, one of the Migos. He was killed apparently following a dice game that he had nothing to do with, that was apparently also following an argument over basketball that was mostly involving Quavo, and there's some people suggesting that the gun was misfired and even the person shooting wasn't meant to shoot Takeoff, but other people were sent to the hospital with less life-threatening injuries. Takeoff was pronounced dead on the scene.
Man, it sucks. As much as we rail on Migos, I think Takeoff was the strongest of the three
100%.
within his rapping, and we would always say that. Um, and like, it's sad to see like kind of the beef between him and Offset and everything as well, and that just to end tragically that way. Like, I can only imagine how bad like Offset must feel, and others that never got to really reconcile the differences because it's family at the end of the day, and it's like I can't imagine the weight of guilt and everything that like Offset's feeling and Quavo's feeling and everybody around. So it's tragic. It sucks. Especially he was young. He was only 28.
He was only
so,
28. He was arguably like the glue that kept Migos together. Other outlets that I think of pay much less attention to music than we do, even an album. They've said that like he is that glue that kept Migos together, but he really was like Quavo was his nephew. I believe Offset was another one of his cousins, like really much closer to him in age. Of course. Sorry, Quavo was his uncle. Sorry. Let me make that mistake. Yeah. Even I in my own family, I confuse that a lot. But so Quavo was his uncle, and he was one of the more consistent. He was the most consistent rapper in Migos. Quavo and Takeoff just released that record the other week that we trashed on because it just flat out wasn't good. And Migos have not really hit that highlight that they had in Culture 1, Culture 2 era. And it seemed like, they had a lot of unfinished reconciling to do, but this doesn't seem to be out of any malintent, the people who are still being found out. One thing that's fair enough to say about this is that you've had a big increase in rappers dying, and a lot of folks have also included folks like Juice WRLD and Lil Peep and others in that, but like, those are overdoses. I think that's a totally separate category. It's tragic. You have a lot of artists dying that are younger, and it's happening recently, but like, fucking rappers and artists have always been dying. This is particularly about shootings. This is particularly connected to like mass shootings in America and the fact we have fucking guns all the time that we're strapped about this. And this is a genre that more than any other genre in music in the world glorifies this kind of violence and glorifies this kind of stuff. Like, the idea that pieces would come out over an argument over dice or basketball is fucking ridiculous. And we joked the shit ton about XXXTentacion, but the idea of him being shot over motorcycles or like expensive cars and not any of the other things he did is like ridiculous. Like, this is an, I don't know what the proper term is, epidemic or pandemic or whatever, but there are way too many artists, especially like young black men, who are dying due to gun violence that is happening in this country, that is happening to people who aren't artists, that, like many other subjects, and I'm not really putting conspiracies as to why this is happening, but like, it just goes by the wayside in the news very often because, it's tragic, we feel bad, especially when it's a celebrity we can put a name to and a face to, but this is just gonna keep happening, and more so in an Audioface context, this is music that keeps getting, it keeps getting glorified. And so you see the gruesome videos that get shared of Takeoff, and it's like stuff that's been talked about in Takeoff songs and other stuff in trap music songs. Like, the descriptions of what's happening that I'm not going to pull back on Audioface is like that shit. So it's really painful to think about.
Sucks.
Yeah. So of course we all send our thoughts out to Takeoff's family, loved ones, etc. And as we talked about Aaron Carter, he was passed away just this weekend, age of 33, 34, I believe. He was a brother of Nick Carter, not one of the Backstreet Boys as Nick Carter was, but still a child, musician, child celebrity, had a lot of different features on Disney Channel or Nickelodeon. But, later on in his career, as we talked about a lot in the past 5-6 years of Audioface, also had like drug issues and acted out a lot and got himself into legal trouble. And so this, drowning in a bathtub thing, you know how that goes, you know how that sounds with these kind of artists, but of course you feel bad about it because this person's definitely gone too young and definitely struggling.
Yeah. Yeah, and we talked about on previous audio face too of a while ago of his struggles and everything. So it's not a surprise, but it's still not great to hear and everything, and really tragic to say because we were saying like he needs to get help and so on and so forth, and kind of see the consequences of not getting that much needed help.
Last word on it. Kanye West is in the news a lot. This is the direction for him if he doesn't get help. I don't think that's the last point we haven't made about this, but I think we get this idea that Kanye is impenetrable from this like pandemic that's happening. I think it's less the shooting, but I think it's more of the unaddressed mental issues ultimately being his downfall. Listen, I love talking shit on the guy, and I love pointing out when he's stupid, and I think he's, especially at this time in America, being an absolute piece of shit and reprehensible for those anti-Semitic comments, as we've talked about on Audioface and PowerPort. But I also don't want him to succumb to his own mental health issues.
Agreed.